Minnesota sports fans, to another edition of Gophers on SI. Jonathan Harrison here, joined by our Gophers experts here at Bring Me the Sports, Tony Liebert and Nolan O'Hara. Boys, the Gophers football season opener last night was just about as miserable as everyone expected and hoped it would be, except for our own Joe Nelson, who predicted 10-2 and predicted a 40-26 score for the Gophers last night. Too bad Joe's not here, so he can't respond to his predictions. But boys, we have a lot to talk about in this game. And the main one is the Gophers offense, which once again, under PJ Fleck, looked inept, to say the least. 166 passing yards, less than 100 rushing yards, scoring just 17 points on the night. And there was a lot of hype being built up about what this offense could look like with Max Brosmer at the helm, and it did not look good, to put it lightly. And the question I have for you guys leading off here is, PJ Fleck is in probably the coldest seat in maybe all of major North American sports at this point. And he's gotten 8 contract extensions in 7 years. This guy is as safe can be, and yet his offense does not attempt to go outside of the bounds of just run the ball 3 times and then punt if you don't get a first down. It seems a very conservative offense and an offense geared towards not losing when there's no real concern for losing your job. What's going on with PJ Fleck's offense, guys? I'll start with you, Tony.
Yeah. I think you said it well. That's the frustrating thing, is it's just kind of the same story, different year, and especially this offseason when from a personnel perspective, they went out, added 3 transfer portal running backs for the scenario where Darius Taylor is injured, and that happened week 1. And Marcus Major showed that he can be a talented running back. He didn't have a great game by any means, but Max Brosmer didn't have a great game by any means either, but he showed flashes at times that he can at least operate an offense at the level of how well he can. That's a whole different story, but the personnel is there, and it just continues to be the same struggles schematically, where it's just very predictable offense. The moment they get into the red zone, it's very conservative, just playing for the field goal and not playing for touchdowns. They're playing the field position battle, and they're just not doing it well or effectively. And it just seems like they're lost, and they don't really even have like an identity. They're leaning on the run, and the run's not working. And it just seems like they were unprepared for what they were going to face in week 1.
I think most of it is they're unprepared for not having Darius Taylor. They did go out and add running backs, but this is still like an offense that pretty clearly is built around him. So, I mean, they had Marcus Major. I thought he played pretty well, that he ran pretty well, but they were going to hand the ball off a lot to Darius Taylor. There's no question about that was going to be the focal point of the offense. And I think, too, I think people really did need to temper their expectations as far as this is going to be some dynamic passing attack a year after, the struggles we saw last year. But I just never saw that this was going to be somehow a fantastic turnaround year when you're bringing in a transfer quarterback who's got to learn a whole new offense, adjust to the FBS level. I mean, playing in 50,000 people at the Gopher Stadium last night, it's a big change of pace for sure. So I think the expectations that this was somehow going to be a quick, completely different turnaround offense that's going to be scoring 35 points a game, I just don't think that people should have been expecting that. I think there can be frustration certainly with specific calls, like the 3rd and goal running the ball call, and we can certainly get into that too. But I think the idea that this was going to be a philosophically different offense, or that it was going to be dynamic just because of a quarterback change and some other personnel changes, I just don't think was realistic to begin with.
Yeah, and I think the point you started off with, and I think that is a major frustration for Gophers fans, is that it didn't seem like there was many answers for that offense after we all knew, and after the news came out, that Darius Taylor would be gone. And for a guy that missed a number of games last year, I don't know how you go into a season and not prepare for that inevitability with a guy who already shows that he had injury issues last year. Sure, he did put in all the work. He said he put in all the work to make sure it wouldn't happen again this year. But game one, injured, missing, doesn't play the game. And it just seems like there was no answers for how to operate this offense. And I don't understand why there was no preparation for that fact or that scenario when it happened, 6 times last year.
Right. Yeah, and I think there is. I think there is something to be said for that, but at the same time, I mean, they did try to prepare for this possibility, right? They brought in, Major Bangura, Magnum. They brought in, a couple transfer running backs to try and ease that, because they had running back, they had a lot of injuries in the running back room last year, so they did try to prepare for that possibility. But I think it just doesn't. There's no way to prepare when you have a guy like Darius Taylor, who is such a dynamic running back and did what he did. I mean, in the games he played last year, he averaged 133 rushing yards a game. He was leading the country in rushing when he first took the field. I mean, this is a guy who is an exceptional running back and who is difficult to replace. So even when Major has a pretty solid game like he did last night, it's just not going to be the same without Darius Taylor. And that makes it particularly tough on Brosmer coming in last night, where he doesn't have this standout running back you're expecting to have. And so he's making his debut against a Power 5 team, under the bright lights at Huntington Bank now Stadium. But yeah, it's just it's just a tough. I don't think there should have been like super high expectations that this is going to be like they're going to blow out North Carolina. I think we got the game that everybody expected, and frankly, they still should have won the game. They missed the field goal at the end, and that's, as everybody said post game, that's not the play that lost them the game. There, and I mean, there were plenty of other things they could have done better, but they were in a position to win a game that was probably going to be close, and they just didn't get it done.
What do we think of the sloppiness? Because there was a lot of sloppiness, and this just felt like a very unorganized team at moments. There was a lot of penalties, crucial penalties that really hurt the team last night. I don't remember that being a problem in years past, but what do we make of that and how that developed last night and that played out throughout the match?
Yeah, well, Fleck, after the game, saying uncharacteristic, and frankly, he's right. I mean, this was one of the least penalized teams in the country last year. I think the really tough is you have on 2 of your first 3 punts, you have illegal formation penalties. Things like that should not happen. And first year special teams coordinator, that's not a good way to start out with these 2 penalties right away. You have the couple missed field goals. There's a lot of these errors. I mean, in theory, these should be things that are easy to clean up, right? The illegal formation penalties on punts, those should be easy to clean up. There shouldn't have been 2 on the first 3 to begin with, but those should be easy to clean up. They had the defensive holding that negated the strip sack, fumble recovery. That ended up being North Carolina's only touchdown of the night on that drive. You take that away, it's a different game. So those are just inexcusable errors. I think the Gophers know that. Fleck knows that. The team knows that. And there were some missed tackles towards the end of the game. But all in all, I think these are very fixable issues, right? So you take that away. I think there's still, again, depending on what your expectations were. If your expectations were that they were going to go 10-2 and go to the college football playoff like Joe had predicted, then you're probably going to be disappointed this year. But as far as, things, these are fixable issues. They can still compete. They could still compete with Iowa or Wisconsin. I think they can still turn some of these things around. I think it's obviously frustrating when you watch first game of the year and you see these mistakes over and over again, especially some that really shouldn't happen at any point.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that will hopefully be fixed as the season goes along, and we saw it a little bit last night near the end of the game, Tony. Max Brosmer, making his Gophers debut, making his Big Ten debut, had a lot of rough moments. The final drive certainly looked a little bit better, looked a little bit more composed, and looked like he was connecting with this offense a little bit better. But you would want to see better throughout the game from Brosmer, going 13 of 21. Throughout the nights, 166 yards passing, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Some of the balls he was throwing were a little high, were a little off target. Is this something that we should be concerned about, or do you think that will be fixed as the season goes along? Because it seems like he's a very confident kid and confident in his own abilities.
Yeah, definitely after the game in the post game press conference, he seemed still very confident in himself that he can turn things around and kind of looking forward to the rest of the season. And from his perspective, I would imagine the frustrating thing when you kind of watch this offense is it's almost like they're running the same pass play you see on like a college football video game, that it's just the same play over and over with like the same routes over the middle, and it just seems too predictable. And there's not much separation with the wide receivers, which is odd because it's these talented players that have had success in the college level. And it just seems like the passing game specifically, there was just not much connectivity. And that's something that obviously will just improve as the year goes on. Kind of going off what Nolan's been saying, that it is really easy to overreact to a game like that, because there was so much frustrating things to see offensively, that there was just no explosiveness. But I do think there was some things to like from Brosmer in that game, and I think he looked closer to Tanner Morgan than Ethan Kaliakmanis, which I think is a good thing for the Gophers.
Yeah, there was one pass I remember to Daniel Jackson where he just threw it, layered it in between what, three North Carolina defenders on the left side. It was a really nice pass that you could see. Oh wow, there's some serious arm talent here, and being able to thread in these passes. So certainly stuff that, or something that the Gophers can build on, and a couple of nice plays there from him. Hopefully, a little bit more passing oriented, if especially if Darius Taylor is going to be out. Let's talk about the overreactions. Obviously, we've been talking about the lack of a pass game last night. It's a trend among PJ Fleck's offenses since he took over the program. Looking through the rankings throughout PJ Fleck's tenure here, 122nd in passing yards in 2017, 90th in 2018, 47th in 2019. We'll skip 2020 because that was just a weird year. 118, 116, and 126th last year, and we saw 166 yards passing last night. Do we expect this offense, with the talent they have? I know we discussed it earlier this week that there should be a little bit more passing involved with Max Brosmer at the helm. Do we expect them to get better at the passing and utilize that portion of their game better than they have the past 3 seasons, and hopefully be above the 100th ranking line, Nolan?
I mean, do I think it'll be better? I think it will get better. I think it's a first game last night. Again, Brosmer making the jump from the FCS level. I think that game, no matter what, is going to have some hiccups, right? It's not like you can just jump in and it's going to be smooth sailing and and jump right on. I just don't think you should expect the Gophers to philosophically change to be a dynamic pass heavy offense. I think they're going to run the ball 2/3 of the time. I think they're going to try to, convert on these 3rd and 7, the kind of crossing routes, and I think they're just going to try and be a little bit more effective than they were last year. I don't think they're going to be really fundamentally changing what they're going to do. I think we're going to, when Darius Taylor comes back, I think you're going to see him run the ball a lot. And I think it's not going to be a fundamental shift in philosophy.
Tony?
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think if this game taught us anything, is that PJ Fleck is always going to want to have that style of an offense. In 2019, they had two future NFL wide receivers, so that helped them, I guess, be a little more dynamic in the passing game. But PJ Fleck's found his comfort zone when it comes to play calling and running an offense, and that is relying heavy on the running game, and then hoping to get those big plays. You see, like a 25 or 30 yarder to Darius or to Daniel Jackson, or in this game specifically, there were a couple 20 yarders to Jordan Newman had one, Marcus Major had one. If there is, I think, a positive to take from the passing game, it's getting the running backs involved, because I think they really tried to do that. And earlier this week, that was something we were talking about that they could try to do this year. And I think that's something they could build off of and continue to do that, because of the struggles they do kind of have working in the middle of the field really the last 4 or 5 years now. So I think they can build off of that. I don't think, like Nolan said, I don't think they're going to become a air raid Mike Leach offense. I think they're going to still be a Big Ten West football team at their core and rely on the run. But I guess only time will tell how much that running game improves with Darius Taylor possibly coming back soon.
So after last night's 19-17 loss to North Carolina, do we have any changed expectations for what this Gophers team can be this season, Nolan?
Yeah, again, it depends on how lofty your expectations were, right? Like the 10-2 college football playoff. I mean, that's not gonna happen. I mean, can they win 6, 7 games, 8 games maybe, and make a bowl game? Yeah, I think they still can do that. I think this was a game that you would have liked to win for sure, but I think it is a game that was evenly matched. It was a team that it wasn't like the Gophers were head and shoulders above North Carolina. I think too, one thing people should understand is like North Carolina's defense is good. They returned, I want to say, like 7 or 8 of their front defensive defensive line linebacker core. This is a good defense. So the fact that the Gophers struggled with a new quarterback, first year quarterback, with a first year running back without Darius Taylor, I don't think that should have come as a surprise really to anyone. And so when they play, they'll have a couple of games against defenses that won't be as talented as North Carolina's coming up. And then as they kind of get more chemistry and time together, I think that the offense will improve. Darius Taylor coming back will certainly boost them. And I think the defense first game really was pretty good. I mean, I know there's some frustration towards the end where they were able to run the ball and kick field goal after field goal, but they held them to field goals every time. North Carolina scored 1 touchdown. In the beginning of the game, Max Johnson was struggling to complete passes through the interception to Wally. So I think there are a lot of positives as much as like the game itself was not a positive. I think there are things you can look at and be like, well, this team is not it's not a terrible team. It just you can't expect them to be a team that's head and shoulders above North Carolina, and you can't expect them to beat Michigan or Penn State. But can they win 6, 7, 8 games, make a bowl game, win another bowl game? For sure.
Tony, change expectations off this game? Any?
Yeah, I mean, going into this game and going into the season, I definitely thought that 4 wins would be a possibility, and I still think that's a possibility. But kind of building off what Nolan said, you can take an optimistic view, and Rhode Island and Nevada are going to be 2 games that they're going to be heavily favored to win. So let's say they win both of those. And the Iowa game at home, as frustrating as this game was, that game is truly a coin flip, and it will be, I think, as long as PJ Fleck's here. He knows that that's a game that if he wins, the entire season and vibe of the season changes. So let's say they win that game and they start the year 3-1. If you flip flop the Iowa and North Carolina games, I don't think anyone would be complaining. A 3-1 start, I think, would have been very realistic at the start of the year. So then you go into Michigan, you have some newfound optimism that maybe they knock off the Wolverines, and you're kind of just back where we started. So obviously that Iowa game gets a lot bigger because if you lose that game, or God forbid you get upset against Rhode Island or Nevada, then the sky can start falling. But at this point, it's far from that happening. If they lose to Iowa, the sky, you could pretend that it's falling, but it's really not. Like you said, PJ Fleck has a very cold seat. And like worst case scenario, they start the year 2-3. You got USC at home. You pick up a win there, your momentum completely changes. A lot of the games in the middle of the schedule are true coin flips. So I think they're going to have plenty of opportunities to get this back on track, but they also are going to have plenty of opportunities to continue to struggle because they are coin flip games, and there are things that they do have to improve from this game. Specifically, just decision making, discipline with the penalties is a very uncharacteristic thing that PJ Fleck teams typically don't have. But I think he's good enough of a head coach that he realizes that. And really, since he's been with the Gophers, they've steadily improved throughout the season, and there's no reason why they can't do that again this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Hoping for better coming up next Saturday. Looking forward to it. Boys, good stuff from you. Good stuff covering the game last night. A late one for sure because of the storms that blew through the area. Go read all of Bring Me the Sports' work over on Gophers on SI, Minnesota Vikings on SI, Timberwolves, Twins, and Badgers on SI as well. Looking forward to it, boys. Good luck for the rest of the season for the Gophers. Looking forward to some improvement. Minnesota sports fans, thanks for watching. We'll be back again next week with another topic to discuss.